We are just 2 days away from the 2021 Daytona 500, so it's time to get those bet slips ready and get your DFS lineup set because we know what the field looks like. We know who is starting where, and it's time to get set for this year's event. Welcome on into the FanDuel Live Q&A. That's right here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope channels. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down all of your questions, talking about NASCAR DFS and betting for the Daytona 500. No matter where you are watching this stream, you can get a question in. We'll answer it here on the air. We can ask that in the chat section over on YouTube. We'll also take questions from Twitch, Facebook, and Periscope. So no matter where you are watching, get those questions in, whether it be DFS or betting. We'll answer those live here on the air for Sunday's race. Looking at the odds here over at FanDuel Sportsbook for the Daytona 500, Denny Hamlin, the favorite, he is 8-1. Chase Elliott is 10-1. And the Hamlin number is interesting because he is starting deeper in the pack, and that might, if you're kind of new to NASCAR, might be kind of surprising because you could see, okay, he's starting 25th. Why is he still the favorite? But it's because starting position doesn't really matter effectively at Daytona. Track position does matter, but you have 500 miles to work your way forward throughout the pack, plenty of time to make up that track position. B, it's pretty easy to pass here. So you could start 40th and still win this race pretty easily. We've seen Hamlin come from, deeper in the pack to win races before. I think he started 21st in 2019, or he was either 21st last year or 2019 when he won the race. So does not matter by any means. Some interesting movement we've seen throughout the day today. Eric Almirola, who won the first duel last night, has been bet down to 12-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook. He was 17, I think, when things opened back up this morning. He's now down to 12, so a lot of interest there. And I think that to me has taken away the value off of Almirola. He's always been a guy I have been willing to talk up when it has been a restrictor plate, or I guess now a pack racing track, because he is so good on that track type. He's got a long track record of success there, and he's always been a guy who has been in contention for wins on these tracks. But now, when he's 12-1, and I've got other guys here I can bet, like Logano, Blaney, Keselowski, that's going to be a lot tougher for me to get to. So I think Eric Almirola is a very talented pack racer, and I think that he is someone I am broadly interested in, but I think this number is just kind of too short at 12-1 right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. I can see there is a race to be the first comment going on Facebook. Congratulations, Steven. You were our winner. The betting odds were against you, Steven. So I'm impressed with your ability to get in there. That you were 8-1 as well on FanDuel Sportsbook in a 3-person field. So kudos to you on the win for that one. Other things that are of note here, I think, with regards to the betting odds, we did see some guys lengthen after last night's race, and the big one to me is Eric Jones. I didn't really have a lot of interest in Eric Jones previously. He was 55-1. It was his first race with Richard Petty Motorsports, and it's a pretty big equipment downgrade for Jones, going from Joe Gibbs Racing, one of the best teams, to a team that has issues with funding. 55-1 was not long enough to get me to bite on Eric Jones, but now you can see him down here at 70-1. I find that at least interesting. Jones didn't do a whole lot in the dual race last night. Honestly, there just was not a ton of speed there. The question is that indicative of what we should expect on Sunday, or just kind of a one-race fluke for Jones? But when we go back to, last year as Bubba Wallace in this seat, and Bubba was a good pack racer. Part of that's because he is just a talented driver. That's definitely a factor to consider, but he was competent on this track type, especially at Daytona, where the speeds don't matter as much. Talladega, you do need a bit more speed there than you need in Daytona. Bubba finished 5th in Daytona last year. He was running up at the front a couple of times. He was second in the 2018 Daytona 500, not on this sheet here because it's just the past 2 years, but we've seen Richard Petty Motorsports be good on this track type in the past. So now that Jones's number is lengthened to 70-1, I actually do think there is finally some value on him. Pulling up my win sims here, Eric Jones, his implied odds to win are 1.4. The odds in the sims are 1.7. So it's not a huge edge to get Eric Jones at 70-1. I think that I probably should bake in a bit more volatility within these win simulations because some of the longer shots don't really have, realistic chances based on these numbers. But I think that It's an appropriate number for Jones, and I'm finally willing to entertain betting him at that number. I know someone was asking me on Twitter, I think it was Josh, was asking me on Twitter about Eric Jones a couple weeks ago. I said no at that time, but now that his odds have stretched out to 70-1, I do think that we could potentially, you could talk me into it at that number. Other things that pop up within my win sims here for the 500, Alex Bowman grades out really well within them. Part of that's because he's just really high in my model, and that's because we know that Hendrick has a lot of speed on these tracks. We've seen him run at the front pretty consistently in the pack racing tracks. Hasn't gotten a win yet on one of them. But we saw his teammate win last year. William Byron won. So we know the equipment can get the job done. Bowman had a lot of speed in the qualifying session on Wednesday night, but now some question marks around whether he'll have to go to a backup engine. He had some issues during the dual race on Thursday night. Now, I don't think we'll get an answer on Bowman until Saturday. They have 2 practice sessions Saturday. My guess is that they're going to run that puppy out there and see if they have engine issues once again. If they do, he's probably going to change the engine and drop to the back. That would be a slight downgrade. But I think it's noteworthy that my Sims do like Bowman quite a bit. My numbers like him quite a bit. 8.3% win percentage in the Sims, whereas his implied odds are 4.8%. I'm not quite at that high on Bowman personally. I wouldn't put him above Chase Elliott for sure, but I do think that there is still some value on Bowman now that his odds have slipped to 20-1. He was 18-1 before the dual races on Thursday night. Other names to stand out here, William Byron definitely going to a backup car after he wrecked during the duels on Thursday, so he will start in the back. Not a huge impediment, though, again, just because like we're talking about before with Hamlin, it doesn't really matter too much where you start. Byron, 6.9% there, 5.7% in the win odds over at FanDuel Sportsbook. That number has come down. It was 20-1 at open, now 17-1 after last night. For some reason, he shortened despite wrecking and going to a backup car, going to the back of the field. You know, whatever. That is what it is. Matt DiBenedetto, 6.5%. He's 30-1, which puts implied win odds at 3.2%. That's a pretty good value on DiBenedetto. Now, I was not super in on DiBenedetto previously. No, it's just like an oversight or something by me. But I think I'm talking myself into him at 30-1. I don't currently have a ticket on DiBenedetto, and I'm pretty close to being maxed out with regards to outrights for this event. But, you know, if I hadn't bet anything, I think that DiBenedetto would be one of the guys I would be considering. He's shown some strength on this track type in the past. We pull up here the past 2 years on pack racing tracks. I could just control F this, but that would be too easy. Okay, I actually can't find them, so we're going to do this here. There we go. That's easier. It's only one top 10 finish, but when we pull this up, you're going to see a lot of laps led for DiBenedetto in this time. Led 49 laps in 2019 Daytona 500. That was when he was with Levine Family Racing. He led 10 laps in Talladega as well. Did finish 8th in Daytona back in 2019, but again, that was with a lesser team than he was with right now. He's with Penske, effectively. He's with Wood Brothers, but it's effectively a Penske car. I think that things bode pretty well for DiBenedetto, so for me personally, I'm not sure if I'll get there, but that's mostly because I have too many outrights already, and I don't want to tap myself too thin in that market. But I think if you have not done any outrights yet, DiBenedetto is a guy I would consider. Steven, did I win anything first guy? This is my first day live with y'all. Unfortunately, we used to have a contest for the football Q&As that we had here every Friday. It was a drawing for the Sunday Million contest on FanDuel for football. No drawing here, but Steven, I will give you a gold star. I don't know if I can give that to you via Facebook. So gold star, maybe we'll go with that. You can have a free question, any question you want with NASCAR. Everyone has a free question, but an extra free question for you, Steven, over on Facebook. Going back to the win sims here and checking out other numbers that might be interesting. See some value here on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He's at 5% in the win sims, 4% in the implied odds. That's because he's very volatile, and that's a good thing because we want drivers who have the ability to hit the high end of the range of outcomes, and we know Stenhouse can do that. He is a past Daytona winner. He has also won in Talladega, so the skills are there, and I don't care too much about the team downgrade for him. He was previously with Roush Fenway Racing, now with JTG Doherty. JTG Doherty can get good finishes on this track type. Chris Buescher in 2018, I think, had top fives in both those races. Stenhouse really good in qualifying, which means that he has a good engine under the hood. So Stenhouse, interesting as well from an outright perspective. If you were to give me one outright to bet right now, I do have an outright on this guy, so I don't actually need to do this. But if you were to give me one outright right now, be this guy, Christopher Bell, his first race with the Joe Gibbs Racing. He'll be starting 5th, and he'll effectively be starting 4th or 3rd if Bowman winds up dropping to the back. But we have Bell 4.6% in the win sims, 2.6% implied odds for his win, or for a win there at 38-1. Bell's in the first race with Joe Gibbs Racing. And when you look back at the past history at Daytona, you see a lot of Joe Gibbs Racing cars at the top. It's not just Denny Hamlin. We saw Eric Jones, the previous occupant of this 20 car. He won at Daytona back in July of 2018. He also won the Busch Clash last year, aided heavily by Hamlin. But hey, I mean, it was Hamlin helping him, so that does bode well for Joe Gibbs Racing there as well. So the equipment's good. He has good teammates with Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, and kind of Bubba Wallace as well because he's in an affiliated team. So I think if I had one outright to bet right now, it would be Christopher Bell at 38-1. The second outright I would pick would actually be a shorter guy, and I know that there is a stigma against betting quasi-favorites at these tracks because they're so high variance, but we can account for that variance and still like Joey Logano. He is 12-1 at FanDuel Sportsbook to win this event. My win sims have him winning the most often at 9.3%. He is number 2 in my model straight up, I think behind Alex Bowman. So not a surprise that Logano winds up being at the top pretty often. And I think that he's kind of just due for some regression with regards to his finishing positions, because when you look at his race log on this track type, we'll pull this up here, you're going to see a lot of wrecks recently for Joey Logano. 3 crashes last year across 4 races. Didn't finish well in the first Talladega race either, but look at all those laps led. And that shows that he runs out front. You can get in trouble running out front because wrecks happen there too. Logano got wrecked while leading in the August Daytona race last year. So running out front does not mean you're going to win the race, but it means you have that upside to win the race, and you're going to be in position to capitalize if you just happen to stick around effectively. And Logano has shown he can do that. He won the Daytona 500 in 2015. He is a 4-time winner, I believe, on the pack tracks with 3 wins at Talladega. He can do well here. So getting him at 12-1, I think, is enough to alleviate my concerns around the volatility here. So I do think, despite the concerns around the reputation, the earned reputation of this track, I do still think that Joey Logano, a good value bet at 12-1 right now over at FanDuel Sportsbook. If we want to shift gears here and talk about daily fantasy, we talked about this on the podcast and the track preview. What you want to do for Daytona is sort by starting position and then just look from the back and look for drivers who have the possibility of getting a good finish, running well, and potentially winning the race. If we sort here from, let's actually just do this the other way because this is probably easier to see, easier to visualize. We're going to see Austin Cindric. He is starting 39th, and Cindric has not run a Cup Series race ever. This will be his first career race, but he is driving for Penske, and that means he is teammates with Logano, Keselowski, Ryan Blaney. All those guys are like the favorites to win this race. So if he gets to the front, he'll have help, and I think that that's noteworthy here for Austin Cindric. Last night, speeding on pit road, very much a rookie mistake. I'm not going to overlook that because he could do that again on Sunday, but I think that we saw enough speed there. After he got lapped, like he hung with the field and raced pretty well. So I think that Austin Cindric, pretty interesting. Starting back in 39th, he had $6,200. If you want to use someone like Denny Hamlin or Brad Keselowski in the middle here, you got to find salary relief, and I think that we do get that via Austin Cindric. And I see we have a Logano fan over on YouTube, Logan, Logano, makes sense. His favorite racer, and he says he loves the heat check. So thank you, Logan, for watching, and it makes sense. You'd be a Logano fan with that first name. Other drivers starting in the way back who could potentially be big sources of place differential for DFS on Sunday are Ross Chastain, Eric Jones, Chase Briscoe, Tyler Reddick. All these guys have upside. I think that is interesting because we may not, I think that there are enough names here where we're not going to get all these guys to be popular. The one guy I think could go overlooked, especially under the assumption that Ross Chastain gets a lot of popularity, because Chastain, popular driver, the watermelon man, people love Ross Chastain. I think that will lead to Tyler Reddick being overlooked. Reddick is starting back in 29th, so still pretty far back. Didn't run well in the duels. He had a really bad qualifying lap. I think he had to change transmissions before the dual race, so possible he missed a shift during his qualifying lap, but I think that he has upside. The reason I think that is because he showed upside when he was in the Xfinity Series previously. I've actually got Xfinity Series stuff pulled up here. Is this the right one? I think it is. Okay, there we go. Tyler. Oh, no, that's definitely not Xfinity. That's Cup. Okay. Tyler Reddick, a winner here in the Xfinity Series back in 2018, I think it was. Yeah, so 2018 win, ran at the front outside of that as well. I think he won at Daytona in the Truck Series too. So he's shown that he can win on this track type. Yeah, won in the Truck Series as well. He's shown he can win this track type. He has equipment that can win. We saw Austin Dillon win his dual race last night, won the 500 back in 2018. So I think that Reddick is actually pretty interesting for DFS starting back in 29th, and I would not expect him to be all that popular. So if you're looking for an under-the-radar value guy starting further back, Tyler Reddick would probably be the main guy I would turn to there. Okay, Steven says, Bubba Wallace is an underdog start Sunday, but he's got a fast car after watching last night. Would you start him over Kyle Busch or Kevin Harvick on Sunday? So, Steven, let me know the format for this, because if you're talking about the NASCAR.com fantasy format, their starting position does not matter. There, I would be willing to go with Bubba, because what we know about Bubba Wallace is that he excels at Martinsville and excels on the pack tracks. I think you have 9 uses per driver on NASCAR.com. I haven't played past couple of years that I got annoyed they got rid of place differential and stuff like that, so I have not played. But I believe that that's the way the format works, and you're just kind of looking for drivers who will finish well. We looked before at Bubba's track record on the pack racing tracks. We know he can run up front. We know he can win these races. So I do like Bubba in that format where you have a capped number of uses. I don't know what this car's competitiveness will look like on other tracks. He's not the best road racer by any means, but I think that there is enough unknown on the 1.5 mile tracks with 2311 Racing where I'd be willing to burn a usage on Bubba for this track. I agree with you. He looked awesome, not just at the finish of that race, but also early on. He was pushing Ryan Blaney really hard, and Blaney was making a lot of progress. So I think that Bubba has a lot of speed. I think he has a lot of talent on this track type. So I'm on board with using him in a format that does not factor in starting position. Now, Steven says that this is for DFS over on FanDuel. The issue with Bubba there is he finished too well last night. He ran too well. He's starting 6th. That means that he is only a consideration for tournaments, not for cash games, because for tournaments or for cash games, we want to focus on the driver starting basically from Di Benedetto on back, maybe Stenhouse if you want to, or Kurt Busch. But you want to focus on this bottom half of the field, drivers starting further back, who can get you place differential points, get you upside via that. For tournaments, I need someone who has the ability to win. And I want that race-winning upside. I think with what Bubba showed on Thursday, he could win this race. I think that's very realistic. We've seen his betting odds come down. What is he now? It's 20-1, so still basically the same as he was. He is at 4.5% to win in my win sits. Now, the issue we'll have here is that if we're comparing him to Kyle Busch or Kevin Harvick, both those guys have higher win odds in my sims than Kevin Harvick. They also have better projected average finishing positions than Bubba Wallace has. So for daily fantasy on FanDuel, I would go with Busch or Harvick over Bubba Wallace. But if we're talking a format that does not factor in where the driver starts, I think that this is an area of limited uses. I think that Bubba Wallace is the one I would go with there, because I think this is going to be one of the more relevant tracks for him, just because we know how good he can be on this track type, and that's what you want to look for in those formats. So for daily fantasy, I'm not as in on Bubba Wallace, despite agreeing with you that he looked really good in that race on Thursday night. But I think for other formats, he does make sense. And I think that just from a fun perspective, I think he could do really well and be fun to watch on Sunday also. Going back to the DFS angle on this, let's sort once again by the starting position. The 2 key cogs for you for cash games are going to be these 2 guys here, Denny Hamlin and Brad Keselowski. Hamlin, back-to-back Daytona 500 wins, finished 3rd here last year during the summer as well. He's the favorite to win this race for a reason. He is a guy you lock in for cash games in daily fantasy. He will be very popular for daily fantasy, but I don't care. I'm going to be overweight on him regardless, just because there's a reason that he'll be there. He lines up with the process. Tremendous racer. You can stack him with Martin Truex Jr. starting right behind him. A couple teammates there are Joe Gibbs Racing. That makes a lot of sense. Brad Keselowski doesn't have a good track record recently in Daytona. He's crashed in 6 of the past 8 races, which is less than ideal. Not what you want to see, but we know he can win the race. And we were talking about before, you want drivers who have the upside to win, get a good finish. That's in Keselowski's corner. The reason he's finished poorly for the most part is because he's gotten wrecked while leading. That didn't happen last night. He got wrecked while he's running back in like 13th or so, but he's gotten wrecked while leading. In order to get wrecked while leading, you got to lead. We know he has upside. We know he can win this race. I think that makes Keselowski a really good play and not quite as good as Hamlin because Hamlin is so steady, but from a ceiling perspective, they're the same. And you can stack DiBenedetto with Keselowski as well. So my guess is that the go-to combination for daily fantasy on Sunday will be to pair Truex and Hamlin. Get that stack in there for Joe Gibbs Racing, guys deeper in the field. But for tournaments, I'm kind of interested in pivoting to Keselowski and DiBenedetto, pairing those two guys together, just a couple of spots higher. Maybe stacking them with Chris Buescher, jumping back for more forwards like you got Chase Briscoe there. You've got Austin Cindric back here as well. I think that the forwards are pretty interesting. Again, I do not want to be underweight on Denny Hamlin. I think that I want to actively be there. But if you're trying to be different, I do think that there is increased appeal in Keselowski and DiBenedetto. Keselowski will not be contrarian by any means, but I can guarantee you right now he will be less popular than Denny Hamlin because people look at that track record at Daytona, maybe get scared off. I don't think you should be. I still think he is a very good option. Other guys to discuss here for daily fantasy, Chris Buescher not starting super far back, which means he is not a cash game play. If we're looking for cash games, for drivers in the salary tier, I would definitely go Chastain over him. I would go with Tyler Reddick as well. Maybe not Cole Custer. But I think that Reddick and Chastain would be above Buescher for cash games. For tournaments, though, Buescher, awesome driver at Daytona. He has, I think, he has 3 top 5s in the past 3 years, so the past 6 races at Daytona. Let me pull this up here just to make sure. But consistently a top 5 guy, even when he has been in less competitive equipment than what he's in right now with Roush Fenway. It's not great equipment. It's better than JTG Doherty Racing. So this 3rd place finish last year at Daytona, he could have won that race. He was passing Denny Hamlin on the outside with 2 or 3 laps to go. As he was doing that, the caution came out. They reverted to the last timing loop. Buescher got pushed back to 2nd place. Wound up finishing 3rd, but it was close. I was kind of hoping for a win there out of Buescher because I would have benefited financially had that happened. It did not, but still a good run for him. And I think that bodes well for him for tournaments, especially because, again, I don't think he'll be that popular with his starting spot being up in 22nd. I'm not sure how to get a read on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. because he's starting right by Buescher in 21st. I think that Stenhouse, very interesting. We talked about him from a betting perspective. If I like him for betting, probably going to like him for DFS too. Now you'll see here, Stenhouse's record is not great. He's had a lot of poor finishes, a lot of crashes in there. He's earned the nickname Recky Stenhouse, but leading a lot of laps. That means that he is in contention. That means he has the capability of finishing well, winning this race. And again, not everyone can do that. So if you're looking for mid-pack drivers who may go a bit more overlooked as people gravitate further towards the back, I think that Buescher and Stenhouse and Kurt Busch too, also in that discussion as guys who could potentially be a bit overlooked relative to where they should be. I thought that Reddick was kind of that guy a little bit further back, but I think that's where I would go. If you want a super low salary play, like you're trying to jam in, let's say Hamlin, Keselowski, and you want to stack them with, I don't know if you can do this, but let's say Joey Logano. I have no idea what the salaries are for this. I don't want to do the math on the fly. I don't want to pull up the contest, but let's say you want to jam in everyone. I think that Kaz Grala is a guy you plug in to save a lot of salary. $4,500, driving for Colleague, and Colleague is new to the Cup Series, but in the Xfinity Series, they've been awesome. Like, they're a very competitive team. I don't think they're going to half-butt this thing and go into the Cup Series and, putting Kaz Grala in the car. Kaz Grala, another guy who has won previously at Daytona in the lower series. He won here in the Truck Series back in 2017. And the reason that's impressive is because in 2017, it was his age 18 season, but Kaz Grala won that race. So he's $4,500. I don't know what the speed will be. So if it's a cash game roster, I'm getting to Cindric. Cindric hasn't been as good on the pack racing tracks in the lower series as Kaz Grala, Tyler Reddick, guys like that, but he has good equipment. For tournaments, I don't mind Grala just because I think that he could finish well. I think Colleague will be competent in their first year in the Cup Series. Not a full year, but like they're trying this year. They have, I think AJ Allmendinger will be in the field for next week. So I think they'll be decent. We do see, a couple of top 10s pop up in the Sims for Kaz Grala. So for tournaments, I don't mind it. I think that Grala, at least pretty interesting for DFS. Okay, that is all the time that we have for today here, previewing the Daytona 500 for DFS and for betting. But if you want more thoughts on any of these things, whether it be betting or DFS, we do have plenty of more content here on the FanDuel, the FanDuel family of multimedia. We have some stuff over on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed breaking down DFS for the Daytona 500, full breakdown of strategies, full breakdown of why you want to stack the back, drivers who fit that in each salary tier. That's up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Also did a betting preview with Dr. Nick Giffen, RotoDoc. You probably, hopefully, know his name. He's very good at what he does. So if you have not checked out Nick's stuff, be sure you do and check out the podcast we did with him over on Covering the Spread to get a betting preview of this race. Also plenty of written content over at numberFire.com. We have a data sheet which goes through betting odds, starting position, salaries, past performance, stuff like that. That's up on numberFire. Austin Swain will have a helper up, I believe, tomorrow or Sunday for the race too. A betting guide is up. Everything you could possibly want to fill your needs for the Daytona 500. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. If you have additional questions for me, I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast to check out Covering the Spread and the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Outside of that, good luck to all of you with your bets, with your DFS lineups for Sunday's race. Hope it goes well for you if you're betting Xfinity or the Truck Series for the next couple of nights too. Good luck with that. We'll talk to you once again in the very near future. This has been the FanDuel Live Q&A.